Hey, everybody, it's Marla Schultz, host of Flip the Switch with Marla Schultz. New episodes drop every Wednesday on governorsradio.com, and you can follow me on YouTube, marlaschultz.com. And I am so excited because I have yet another one of my favorite people, speaker, humorist, author, amazing juggernaut of talent, the lovely and talented Karith Foster. Karith, I am so thrilled to see you. How are you?
I am thrilled to see you. I've missed you, my friend.
I have missed you too. And I thought, let me start a show and interview and talk to all of my favorite people, all of my favorite comedians. And I've been a big fan of yours for a very long time.
Well, thank you. And the feeling is mutual. You're one of my favorite people.
Well, that's why we're friends. You're a mother, you are an author, you are a speaker, you have created programs for Stanford Business School. I don't know how you do everything you do. I mean, how do you do it? What's the secret?
Well, my favorite expression is you can have it all, just not at the exact same time. Okay, so I don't want anybody thinking that I've solved the riddle. That I have like the power of the universe in the palm of my hand. I do, the sense that I figured out that I do one thing at a time.
Okay.
And not everything's going to be perfect. And that's okay. And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle that I've had to get over for my lifetime. I mean,
how
truly.
So?
I am somebody who thought that perfection meant you are the end all be all. And that once you perfected something or were perfect in certain areas of your life, then everything else just fell into place and life was wonderful and there was no drama or agony or sorrow or anything like that. And that's not real life. That's just not real life.
Well, do you think it has something to do with growing up in Texas and perhaps saddling up on top of a unicorn? Like riding the unicorn.
Something to do with it. My unicorn that I had tied up behind my mansion next to the oil rig. Yes, that's probably what happened. Actually, I mean, it's funny you say that because I did grow up in Texas in a place called Plano that was very affluent and a lot of people had a lot more money than our family did. But it was very Stepford-like. Like everything was about not even how you felt, but how you looked.
Oh, right? Sure.
The image that you were portraying. And I know we aren't the only place in America or the world that was like that.
Hey, Huntington, Long Island was like that too.
The pressure, right? The pressure to look a certain way and have your house a certain way, drive a certain car, get, the best grades and, be this multifaceted achiever in all areas that you were participating in. Like, it was a big deal growing up for me like that. And it was a lot of pressure and a lot of people succumbed to it. And I was one of those people. I, had to spend some time in a hospital for a while because the stress was just too much.
How old were you?
I was 16.
Could you imagine if you were a 16-year-old today and the pressure of, with social media and body image and body shaming and everything, but 16 years old and the stress put you in a hospital. How long were you there?
For a month. And,
really?
and it was a combination of like hormones, right? I was also dealing with like weight issues going up and down. I was also on a lot of medication for my asthma and allergies. So I was on steroids, not the kind that make you an awesome baseball player, the kind that make you look like a sumo wrestler and emotionally just wreck you. Prednisone, right? Horrible stuff. I mean, it saves your life, but it does awful things to your body and your emotional well-being. So it was a combination of all of those things. And so while I was in this hospital, it was a blessing, honestly, because it led me to not hurt myself or harm myself or do anything that I would have regretted that would have really hurt and devastated my family. But I was with other people who, when I saw the problems they had, I was able to take a look back at my life and be like, wow, I'm really fortunate. I was one of the only people who, when they had meetings for SA, sexual abuse or CD, chemical dependency or AA, I wasn't going to those meetings because I didn't have those problems.
You're lucky.
I'm very lucky. And I know that. Like, I know how blessed I am. And it really, that was also like a defining moment for me, because I realized that all of the things that I was letting affect me was
Mm-hmm.
outside stuff. It was outside people telling me I
Sure.
wasn't black enough, right? Or I wasn't whatever
Wait,
enough.
it's because you grew up in a very lily white area and you were the only
Very white.
family of
Right. We
color?
were one of the few, like in a 3-block radius, we were like, I mean, 3-mile radius, we were like the only black, like my senior year of high school. And this became part of my comedy act, which you know well.
Yes.
But like I joke about growing up in Plano and starring in an all-white version of the play A Raisin in the Sun, which is hysterical because it's an all-black cast. There were 1,200 people in my graduating class. 12 of us were black. We were the
1,200.
1%.
Wow.
It was a huge graduating class. This is Texas. It was a huge high school. It took 3 hours just to get through the names, Marla. It was ridiculous. But like but that was my normal. But I did transfer schools when I was 16 to go to the East Side, which wasn't as wealthy. And there were more African Americans over there. And I thought, oh, this is where I'll feel like I really fit in and I'll feel like I belong. Because, I think everybody feels like they don't belong in high school, even
Yeah.
if you're a cheerleader and you're this, that, and the other. And so I went over there thinking like, this is where I'm going to really feel at home. And I'll be with people who are like me and they get it. And they were like, why do you talk that way? You're not black. Why do you act that way? You're not black. Like, so what was weird was I wasn't leaving a situation where people were saying that to me. I went into one that were the people who were supposed to be accepting me. And that was just crushing. It was crushing.
Now, why did you transfer schools?
So I transferred schools it was a multifold reason. I knew I wanted to go into broadcasting and television and media. And that's where the Plano cable station was housed, in the basement of the school. And so I could take classes there to kind of get a leg up before I went on to college. Plus I thought this is where I'll really feel like I fit in. And I left my popularity. I was on student council. I was, I had
You're Karith.
my friends.
You're Karith.
I'm Karith. Yeah. Well, but you know what? It's so funny. I used to lament terribly how I never really had a clique. And I would hang out with everybody, like the cheerleaders and the jocks and sometimes the druggies and the people, the goth kids and the band gigs and the theater crowd and the debate team. And I did all that stuff. I went to cheerleading camp and was president of the Latin club. So vice president. So I was a dork in Cool Kids Clothing. And I used to think, God, I don't really have like one set of friends. Like, I hate that. But now I realize, especially after becoming a comic, what an actual gift it was.
Absolutely.
To go from group to group like that and be able to fall in with them and it not be this terribly uncomfortable thing that I made it out to be in my head.
Sure. But do you think your sense of humor gave you the skills to be able to like morph and move into all these different groups? Because I know for me, it was, I was known as like the funny kid and people like to laugh. So I love the fact that I could hang out even today with the CEO to the garbage man. Like there's no distinction for me. It's like, if you have a sense of humor and you're a kind, good person, I'm in.
I was more of a kind, good person. Like I wasn't like funny. Like I was quirky, I just saw things differently. And I always had a kind of twisted sense of humor. I was never the class clown. I mean, I was like goody two shoes, straight A student. Like I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get detention.
Oh my gosh.
But I was likable.
Well, that's great. I was very similar. I mean, I was having keg parties in my house. I had my Sweet 16, I had a keg party. My parents would go to Temple and I'd have a keg party. And then people were like getting laid in my house and I was, cleaning up after everybody.
Oh my God.
But I was friends, I stole my parents' car at 8th. Like I could have been a super derelict, but I hung out with the goody two shoes. And then I hung out with the freaks and the hitters. We've had very similar parallel existences. And I see life, I call it seeing life through a Rubik's Cube. It's kind of warped. And I think growing up, I know I'm a little older than you, but growing up in that time, not seeing things in a linear fashion. Yeah. I've always been like just a crazy mixed up Rubik's Cube fashion. It was never really encouraged, individuality. It was you're precocious, you're not behaving, you're not paying attention.
And listen, I also came from a really different family background as far as, Black parents who grew up in the projects, who like education was everything.
Sure.
And even though my parents didn't grow up with money, they both have degrees. They're both professionals. And so there was an expected way of behaving that was just set upon me. Like, we don't do that stuff. Like, if I had ever stolen my parents' car, we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
Right.
Because, well, we would. I just would still be standing up because my ass would be too sore to sit in this seat. So you know what I mean? Like, there were just things that I didn't do. And I put that pressure. Now, my brother, on the other hand, he did a lot more than I did and managed to get away. But I think that's like second children stuff.
So you're the oldest.
I am definitely firstborn material.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
But I didn't have the nerve to do what you did. I was too chicken shit. I was like, I'm going to get in trouble. Like, I was always the one who's like, this could go wrong. This could happen. Like, I thought all the scenarios out. And I'm like, it's not worth it.
Not me. I always saw another way out. I always saw a way to game the system. Like, I really could have been a criminal and people would never expect that from me. Ever. And to this day, like, if somebody says no, I would always find another way in, either through the basement, the side door, the attic, anyway.
That's brilliant. I had to learn that skill.
How so?
I had to learn that skill, and I'm still learning it, because I would hear no and be like, oh, okay, well, then I guess that's no. Let me go do something else. Instead of being persistent. Like, I love that has always just been an innate part of your personality. And that's
absolutely.
why you've done so well, especially in the world of comedy. And like, I think I done so well because I was limitless in the sense of I wasn't going to let anybody label me or put me in a box again. And that was part of the experience that I learned from being that teenager who wasn't whatever enough for other people. Well, no, this is who I am. I'm Karith. You can label me if you want, but those labels I don't have to accept those labels.
Good for you. But when did you get that sense of confidence?
I mean, it started at home with my parents. Like, listen, this is where you come from. This is our family. This is your history. Be proud of it. Own it. And then I went to a women's college for college. And I think that was so empowering for me. Because you didn't have the distraction of guys. No distractions of the guy. I mean, listen, I went to Stevens in Columbia, Missouri. University of Missouri was right across the street. There is always a frat party to go to. So that wasn't an issue, but it just was instilled in me, like, as a woman, there's nothing that you can't do.
That's amazing.
Why should you be limited by your body parts or gender? Like, that's ridiculous.
That's
and
amazing.
I think that's really what helped me excel in comedy, because I just don't approach things, even in life, period, comedy, but especially like life and circumstances of, well, I'm going to be treated differently because I'm Black or I'm a woman. I mean, yes, those are things that I am, but they're not all that I am. They don't make up everything that is me. I'm not this monolith. And those are my bonuses.
I just wonder if women today, younger, that have that kind of confidence and self-awareness. What do you think?
I'm raising 2 young women. I mean, they're little girls right now, but
and they're
that's
precious.
What I'm trying to instill in them. Thank you.
They're the cutest little dollops of love. Oh, I miss them.
Thank you. They love you too. My concern, because I do a lot of work on college campuses and all across the board, and this isn't just for girls, but for young men too, I just see this embracing of almost like the victim mentality, right? And it goes hand in hand with the cancel culture that we're seeing. Well, you can't say that because it doesn't, subscribe. I don't subscribe to that paradigm or that narrative. Well, okay, so why can't we, first of all, agree to disagree? Or B, why can't we have a conversation about it?
Have a conversation.
So that we can speak and exchange ideas so I can hear why you're coming from that perspective and you can hear why I'm coming from that perspective. But that's not happening anymore.
No.
And again, it's like this reveling in well, so-and-so said this, so now that affects me personally. Like, when words are weapons, like, whoa, yes, words are powerful, absolutely, but they're only as powerful as you let them be.
Right. You only, people will tell you who they are, and it is your responsibility not to take things personally. And that's been a giant lesson that I've had to learn. Have you been affected by the cancel culture? And how do you?
I have actually,
How so?
shockingly, me who like gets along with everybody, whose humor is pretty clean and generic in the sense that, like, you know, I'm not blue. I don't go in there like, you know, to intentionally offend. But I, you know, I have this really great joke. I think it's a great joke.
Let me run it by me.
I'll run it by you. Well, about, you know, fluctuating in my weight, right? How I'm
Mhm.
okay with who I am now at the age I am. I've you know, I'm good with Karith. But it depends on where I am geographically, how other people see me. Because when I'm in New York City, I'm pleasantly plump. When I'm in LA, I'm a beached whale. But when I go back to the Midwest where I went to college, I'm anorexic. And it's
That's funny.
awesome.
That's funny. That's
I
funny.
thought that was funny. And you would not believe, I've had on a few occasions people come up to me and be like, you know, I suffered from bulimia when I was in school, and that joke isn't funny. And or my sister had anorexia nervosa. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, I wasn't talking about your sister. Nor
Right.
was I talking about you. I was talking about myself, and it was a joke. And, you know, I'm poking fun at myself.
And we're in a comedy club, and that's where you tell jokes, for fuck's sake.
Some people are just looking to be offended, because there's something in that like, what's sad for me is that they're not getting their empowerment from understanding their value and their worth. They're getting it from putting someone else down or making someone else feel bad.
Sure.
Or you know,
passing the buck.
Yes.
Making, you know, blaming somebody else.
Yes.
So
and it's a really dangerous track to go down, this path that we're on, because where does it stop? A lot of the work that I do, and then we may get into it later, but is around diversity and inclusion, right? And my passion, my goal is to revolutionize how we have this conversation about diversity and inclusion, because I think what's been done for the past several decades, while it's been well-intentioned, I want to believe, it's been done very poorly. And it's actually caused more division and polarization, because what do you think you're going to get when you put people into categories? Well, you're diverse if you're a woman, you're a person of color, you're part of the LGBT plus community, you're differently able. Well, you're not diverse if you're a straight cisgender white guy. Okay.
Right.
First of all, like, who wants to be thrust into either category of victim or villain? Nobody. Right. How is that possibly going to bring people together? So I literally trademarked the word inversity. And that's the term I coined for how we should really go about it, which is still, you know, honoring and acknowledging our history, our experiences, like the unique qualities that everybody brings to the table, but shifting the focus from what separates and divides us to what do we have in common? How can we be truly inclusive of one another? And most importantly, and this is the critical part, how can we be introspective, meaning understanding your value, your worth, your connection to humanity? Because when you can see those things in yourself, that's when you can see them in someone else.
Gosh, Karith, I hope that's your keynote speech, which I'm assuming it is, because it's brilliant and insightful and spot on. Do you imagine if Buddy Hackett was performing Don Rickles? I think what makes us different is what makes us funny. You know, the Greeks had the diners, and the Italians with the, you know, the gravy and the noodles, and the Jews, you know, you can't even mention anything anymore. I was at the comic strip, and if it's a young audience, I just know, and then it pushes my buttons, and then I want to use words that I know will completely offend them, because the FU in me comes out. But I was doing a joke about how everybody is so PC, and I was in Pilates, and the instructor says, "Okay, ladies, everybody, let's sit Indian style." Oh, we can't say Indian style. It's now crisscross applesauce. And to me, that sounds like it's a deterrent for sex or a bad STD. You know what I mean?
So that's so funny you say that. I literally talk about that in my program, Stereotype 101, and now Inversity Solutions, because I didn't like, you know, and that's the thing, people have to realize, like, you're dealing with people from different generations, right? Different colloquialisms, different places within the country that use different terminology. Now, listen, I'm not saying it's okay to drop the N-bomb or
no, not at all, or the K
word.
Yes,
exactly. I mean,
the C word. What about the C word? I like the C word. I like the C word.
My husband's Australian, so we hear it. Yeah.
And if you watch Ricky Gervais, what is it,
Oh, yeah.
Afterlife? He is, but I remember I performed in London, and it is more offensive to say the F-bomb than it is to say the C-bomb.
I know.
And I wish, I personally, I love that word. Okay.
I had one joke where I used it.
Yeah.
I had one joke. I'm trying to remember it. But you know what? It's so funny because I would say it, and it was the last word people were expecting to come out of my mouth. Can I tell it on here?
Yeah.
Or is this a clean? Are you sure?
No, it's going on Governors.
Okay. So I talked about how, you know, how guys
in the world.
Okay. How guys name their private parts, right?
Yes.
I'm like, women should totally do that. Right. And I said, you know, I'm going to name mine Julie. Because when you think of the word Julie, what do you think? Fun, friendly, warm, you know, maybe a little
love
fuzzy.
boat. The love boat.
I go, and what's really great is I actually worked with a woman named Julie who happened to be a complete cunt.
Hilarious. That's really, really funny. That's awesome.
That word come out of my mouth. And then people are like, you are so funny. You were so clean. I'm like, did you hear what I just said?
I want to talk about speaking because I have a huge debt of gratitude, and I credit you for giving me the confidence, introducing me to Trisha Brook, who helped, she had the Speakers Who Dare and the Speakers Salon. And I danced around it for a long time.
She and I went to the same college.
But the introduction launched my speaking career because I knew you were speaking. And don't you remember, I would always, every time we got together, I want to do this and that. And not feeling I had anything to contribute in terms of sharing my experience, it just really activated another side of my brain, gave me a whole new outlook on life and confidence. And now I'm a mental health advocate because I also had struggles. I didn't wind up in a hospital, but I was depressed and suicidal, and I had some really, really bad times. The only way out is through, punch through your pain. You got to drain the main pain. That humor was my superpower. I shared an experience with a shrink who was like plying me with all this medication because I was really like white knuckling it. And I told her why I came to the awareness that I wasn't going to kill myself because I didn't want to have sex with the homeless clown that I saw on the 42nd Street platform. There's a lot more, there's a lot more to the story because his little penis was hanging out of this kid's costume. I mean, it was crazy. So she started laughing like that. And I was like, oh. And I go, you know what, that's kind of funny. And every time, I've been depressed 3 other times, COVID, absolutely. However, I never got to the place of wanting to kill myself. But if I ever was in that dark place again, and I'm so grateful for my sense of humor and the skills, the life skills that I've gotten from being a stand-up comic.
Absolutely. I think I know that's what sets me apart from everybody else who's out there trying to do the work that I'm doing. Because, my motto is if you can laugh at it, you can get through it. And as we know, humor comes from a very dark place. Sometimes it comes from pain. Everybody knows, well, not everybody, but comics know that the recipe for humor is, comedy is tragedy plus time.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And we got a lot of that in the world, and it's universal and everybody can relate to it, but not everybody knows how to capture it in a beautiful and graceful way. True. And convey that message. And that's the gift that we as comics have. And I don't think if we hadn't gone through the painful stuff, we wouldn't be here now able to, share our stories.
Sure.
Let other people know they're not alone, because that's what this really is about. This is about
not letting them know they're alone
with people, it's about our shared experiences as human beings that supersedes race and religion and sexuality and gender. All the stuff that we think separates and divides us, the surface stuff, I call it. Humor, as you said, it infiltrates that space, and it's such a beautiful, wonderful gift.
It really is, and it's transformative. Again, I give you props. From my speaking, I've started doing workshops, and I just did a conference, and this woman described the workshop that I did as transformative. And I was like, really? I'm just the queen of dick jokes. But
It's
you know
true.
what? I have a gift, and to
that.
acknowledge, yes, and to own it that's been a big hurdle for me. But
Well, I think
I'm owning
it's hard
it now.
coming from the world of comedy, where as a comic, and now there are so many people who do comedy, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of value placed in what we do because there are so many people trying to do it, maybe,
Yeah.
and so few outlets. I mean, there are more now, but I think that especially also when it comes to how we get paid sometimes, how we are treated by
Horribly.
the industry, and so we expect that across the board. And so I really had to transform how I saw myself as not just an entertainer, but as someone who had something to offer that was valuable.
And to also speak your value and stand up and let go of the fear that, wow, if I don't do this gig for $500 when 20 years ago I got $1,000 and then somebody else is going to come and do it for $300. I don't like how club owners or even bookers or venues, they dangle it like, oh, well, I can get somebody else for half your price. And it's like, to find the confidence and say, okay, go find somebody else. I'm not, because you're going to walk into that situation with so much resentment going, I can't believe I accepted $500 when I got $2,500 10 years ago, but it takes a lot to have the faith that something better is going to come along. And I think a lot of comics don't have that knowledge or faith,
It's certainly not something that's we're taught in this industry, to value your worth. And that's what adversity is about, valuing and honoring your worth, knowing what your value and your worth is. And it's very hard when you're constantly being told you're replaceable or dispensable. And so what's really sad is that comics are some of the most talented, some of the most brilliant and gifted people on this planet. Yes. And we know people who went to Harvard Law School who are brilliant. We know people who maybe got through the 8th grade who are brilliant.
Yeah.
That are in this industry.
Smart and real. I got very good grades. Well, my mother would probably, beg to differ, but my English was off the charts. Math, at the time, they probably thought I was mentally handicapped. No, I talked myself into TV production jobs at WABC here in New York. I turned down what's the job at NBC? The Pages. Because I was like, how am I going to live on $14,000? And this was back in the 80s. Whereas I went and I started working at a 24-hour news channel. However, I digress. But I just lost my thought. Hello, menopause.
That's all right. Well, no. We were just talking about like understanding your value and your worth, right? Yeah. It happens. Well, no, it happens when I walk into a room. I'm like, what the fuck did I come in here for?
Right.
Or I'll open the fridge, like, what did I need? Who asked for what? My kids are saying something. My husband's like, did you find the what? Well, that's why you went in there. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I remember. But cut to, I started doing stand-up, and my friend Susan's husband, Steve, also a Cornell alum, said to me, so Marla, how does it feel to be one of the smartest people? And I was like, what? And he goes, how does it feel to be one of the smartest people? And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, comedians are the smartest people because you take a situation and you can flip it on a dime and make it funny. And again, going back to what you're saying, and include everybody in the joke, which is it's a unifier, as you say. So I love the way your brain works. So anyway, tell us about this book. Well, again, props. This is my ADD brain. Wife, mother, 2 children. I'm assuming, are you homeschooling your kids or are they going to school?
We are. We're doing legit homeschool. Like, wow. Not even on a school system curriculum. Because, I didn't want to send them back and then have them have to be sent home and then everybody have to adjust again.
Right.
Plus, I will be very honest with you. I have a problem with the education system. I think we are not teaching our children to be critical thinkers.
Yes.
I don't think we're teaching our kids to be critical thinkers. I think we're teaching them to be robots and worker bees.
Yep.
And not think outside of the box. And the people who I know who are teachers are amazing and they're incredible. And I have so many dear friends who are teachers who I would love to have, educate my children. It's not them, it's the system.
And their hands are tied into a job
Solving
or
puzzles,
solving puzzles.
And riddles and like, how do I do this? And how do I, And I think a lot right now, what's happening is people are told there's a way to do something and they're being dumbed down, like this Common Core bullshit.
Yes.
Like when I see my friends trying to do that stuff with their kids, they're like, what? Like it's making, and if you look at the research, like there's documentation that says that it's intentionally screwing things up. Like they know it is. So
then why
are they doing that?
Is it the conservatives? Is it the liberals? I don't have kids. And I think, listen, God bless you, Karith, raising 2 kids, 2 women in today's world. I mean, both you and the Aussie, props to that.
I'm not taking down the statues.
Really?
I'm not. You know why? Because you can't, you can't erase
history. It's a reminder. You can't erase history.
Keep that shit up.
Right.
But put the information of the real story underneath.
Yeah.
Let people know who those people really were and what they really did.
Right. And this way we can hopefully learn from our mistakes.
Exactly.
Exactly. That the curriculum, the fact that it just seems like it's revisionism. It's almost similar to what they did in the Soviet Union. You know what? It's not Lenin anymore. We're going to call it St. Petersburg. Oh, now it's Leningrad, but now we're going to go back to St. Petersburg. I think the distinction I was making about the statues was maybe, it was a stupid argument and I completely agree with you.
No, but I understand what you're saying and I know why people are upset by it. Like those people don't deserve to be honored. Well, how about we tell the history of like where those statues even came from? Right. They came at a time when Black people and women were beginning to gain some traction and some power. Mm-hmm. And it was people who wanted to remind them of their place who put the statues up for intimidation factors.
Yeah.
Right? Those people, Robert Lee even said he didn't want a statue erected in his honor. He said that. Those are in those man's words.
I remember that. We weren't taught about the Holocaust, which I find so awful. And maybe that's contributing to all the racism, all the anti-Semitism. Yeah. It's I don't know why everybody, it just seems like society wants to sanitize everything.
Well, that's exactly it. And that's what's happening. And, like I said, I'm somebody who wants everybody's opinions and their ideas and who they are to be respected. But there's also something to be said for when you sanitize things, you're not honoring those people. But there's also something to be said for like furthering the divide, right? Like with the pronoun conversation.
Yes.
That
scares me.
I find it very dangerous.
Yeah.
Because we're already talking about people who feel isolated, right? Because they may feel like they don't fit in for one reason or another. And then to then have your own pronoun and then like to be able to be offended, but to get offended because somebody else doesn't get it because they weren't raised that way or didn't come from that space. Like that's, you got to everybody needs to have a little grace with all of this.
Sure.
Right. And know that pronoun per se isn't a determinant of your worth or your value. And again, this is about how you empower yourself.
Right.
Because you're the only one who can do it, just as like you're the only one who can give that power away. No one can take that from you.
True that. And I was raised, I still call women, hey, you guys, what's happening? I mean, I'm so Long Island. Hey, what's up? What are you guys doing? Gals. It just, if I say gals, I think of, a women's bowling league, and then I'm going to offend somebody. And I have a lot of lesbian and gay friends, and I value all of them. But you ever find yourself, you're like, you don't know what to say? Or
I'm from the South, so I call everybody darling, which could be offensive to some people. Like if I was a guy,
I love that. I love darling.
I call people darling or doll or hey honey. I say honey all the time. Honey, darling, doll, which, I could probably get, if I worked in corporate America, like officially, I could probably get sued for harassment for saying that now. Because there are people who are like, you can't say that to me. Because what did that do to you? How did that actually harm you? Please tell me.
Right. Are you going to need a prescription for Effexor? Also, what I find so interesting about the pronouns is I've noticed on people's signatures, it's they, him, they, we, I, her.
Yeah, she, his, her, she, her, hers, Z's, is like there's stuff that I didn't even recognize when I was looking up the pronouns I teach my kids today for homeschool. It was like they, them, their. I'm like, what? What does a Z mean? And who's coming up with this? Like, again, to me, it's propaganda to just further the divide. It's propaganda to further isolate people who are already feeling like they're outside. And I just think it's really dangerous and scary and wrong.
But I can also see it from the other point of view, from their point of view, where finally, because they felt so marginalized, all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I have a title.
Right.
This is who I am. And it's the acknowledging of the self. But I just feel like, you know, the scales are just, everything is just so imbalanced.
But where does it stop? You know, Dave Chapelle, he's so brilliant.
Brilliant.
And I'm not saying, I hear your point, and I'm not disagreeing with it, but the question is, where does it stop? Like Dave Chapelle said, you know, well, you can't, you know, he had this great joke. He's such a genius. It's like, well, I feel like an Asian American today, so I'm going to use this voice. And he does a very strong Asian accent, which we would think of as offensive, right?
No. Well, I think it's funny.
It is funny, but no, for anybody to do that regularly, like just walking down the street, you'd be like, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? He was doing it in a joke. Right. But we'd be like, why are you talking like that when that's not who you are? Right. It's kind of the same idea of, you know, I choose to identify as this. Okay. Well, I'm not going to stop you, but that doesn't mean I have to agree with it.
But I also like illustrating with voices. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and that's the conundrum right now. That's where a lot of people are feeling very stuck.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of comics are, you know, people who have been going to college campuses, and now it's spread to comedy clubs. And, you know, I've been in 2 documentaries so far about this. One is called Can We Take a Joke? Which my husband said if he made the movie, it would just be a series of people going, no, no, we can't take a joke. And that's actually on Netflix right now. I think you'd
promote that. Let's promote that.
Can We Take a Joke? And then another one, documentary I was in with Adam Carolla and Dennis Prager called No Safe Spaces. And that also was very well done. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I am Karith Foster, who has my own views. And if anything, if I would form my own party called the Common Sense Party.
I think that's brilliant. And I would be, you know, wrangling people to join as well.
Right.
I feel
Bring
the same
back
way.
Thomas Paine.
Yes, great reference. We're at such a stalemate right now with people that need unemployment, and you know, Trump is just spending all this time saying he won, and then the Democrats, the fact that they're not working for the people, especially around the holidays, it's disgusting.
It's horrible. And half of the country's literally split in half. I mean, within a 5 million person like window, there's like, that's the difference. That's the differentiation between who voted for who. Like, what?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Did you see Borat?
I did. I watched it when my kids were staying at my parents' house. First of all, talk about somebody who pushes the envelope. Oh my God. I was cringing the whole time. I was like, oh my God, no, he's not. No, she's not. The girl who played his daughter was brilliant.
Brilliant. The fact that he almost got a major ass whooping at the rally, and when he was singing and performing.
I know. And he lived with those guys. Like, what?
Right. That was crazy. Tell everybody about your book.
Okay. Can I hold it up?
The genesis. Yes, absolutely. Okay. The
So
genesis of the book.
The genesis of the book. You can be perfect or you can be happy. Like, this might as well just be another ultrasound right here. Because I birthed this puppy. I wrote this book, and I got the idea, even for the name, came. I had just given birth to my first daughter. And she was very underweight when she was born, like nothing like that we thought was going to happen. All the doctors, my midwife predicted she'd be 6.5 pounds. She was 4 pounds, 10 ounces.
Wow.
And then she dropped almost a pound because it turned out she wasn't latching properly to nurse.
I remember.
And my kid almost died. I mean, I can talk about it now because I'm not going to get emotional.
Sure.
But when I really talk about it, I still I blame myself, which is what it's one of those, you got one job, my one job is to keep this person alive. That's it. That's my one job right now. And I was failing miserably. And I was beating myself up. And one of my best friends, who happens to share my birthday, she came up to visit me and she goes, look, Karith, you can be happy or you can be perfect. The choice is yours. I choose happy. And I thought about it, and I flipped the script. I flipped the switch on it. You can be perfect, you can be happy.
Hang on a second.
And I thought about that, for it marinated for at the time I was too emotionally traumatized for it to mean anything. It was just kind words from a friend. But then I realized you can be perfect or you can be happy.
Great title.
And I spent how many years of my life trying to be perfect, right? The perfect friend, the perfect daughter, the perfect student, the perfect employee, the perfect intern, right? And to what cost? The cost of my confidence, the cost of sometimes money, the cost of my happiness. And I realized perfection is a lie.
Oh, perfection is a lie.
But happiness is a choice, and it is for every single one of us. And that doesn't mean it's the same. Right. It doesn't mean it's instantaneous. And the caveat for happiness, I really like to stress, is that, it's not a constant. We're not supposed to be on all the time.
No.
That's when you're not well mentally. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to not want to get out of bed for a day or a weekend. 3 weeks, you should call someone. But the reality is we can have it all, just maybe not at the same time. But to be able to choose happiness, to get to a place in your life where that you are in charge, that you are empowered to do this. And there's so many wonderful chapters in here. I call it getting back to the basics. And that's an acronym for, one of the stories I share is about being kind, be kind. And
absolutely.
I tell this really cool story about how random acts of kindness, you just never know how it's going to affect someone's life. And years ago when I was living on the East Side, I don't know if you remember when I was living in Spanish Harlem, or I used to call it Spa Hot.
I remember.
Right? I was on the bus home. I was working at Estee Lauder. I was in Midtown. I was doing stand-up. And this girl got off the bus, but she accidentally left her phone on the seat in front of me. So I thought about turning it into a bus driver. He could put it, but then he was going to go lost and found, even if she ever got it. So I'm let me just take this girl's phone. And this was before there was a lot of caller ID and people still had home phones. So I'm scrolling through, and I go off. I'm I don't know any of her friends, but then I get to D and I see Dad. So I call her father.
Wow.
I go, hi, sir. I go, you don't know me, but I found your daughter's phone on the bus. And he's really gruff. He goes, which one? I go, I don't know. I don't know her name, but I found her phone. He goes, well, I have 4 daughters and 2 of them live in Manhattan. I go, okay, well, it's the one who lives on the East Side, I guess. She's got shoulder length brown hair. And he goes, oh, Emily. I go, okay. Then I found Emily's phone. I go, take my number and have her call me at my office and I'll give her phone back. He's like, well, why didn't you call her? I go, because I
have her phone.
It was one of those, he was just difficult. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So finally he got it. I go, listen, this is just what you're going to have to do. I'm sorry. So he, apparently he did, because she called me at my office the next day. And she came to the lobby at lunch and picked up her phone. And she was so sweet. She brought me a gift card to Macy's or someplace. And we just exchanged pleasantries. I told her I did stand up when I wasn't, working. And it was I thought that was it. End of story, right? Well, about 3 or 4 months later, I run into Delilah. Remember Delilah?
Sure.
Club, right?
Yes.
So Delilah's a comedy club owner on the Lower East Side. And, she goes, Karith, you're not going to believe this. I was just sitting on a plane next to the girl whose phone you found. I go, wow. What? She goes, I'm like, what? I'm trying to put it all together. And I just assumed, they're sitting next to each other. It came out that Delilah owned a comedy club. And she was like, oh, I just met a comic named Karith. And so that's how they made the connection. This is what gave me chills. And to this day, it makes me be like, oh my God. The reason that girl was on the phone was because her father called her. That was the first time they had spoken in years.
Oh, wow.
And they hadn't seen each other for even longer. And she was on that plane to go see her dad.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow. It's the ripple effect. You just drop it in the pond, and then it's amazing. That's a beautiful story. That's a beautiful story. That's really amazing. Bravo, Karith. That's why we love you. That's why
I love
you're a shiny star. That's why you glow in the galaxy, and how you are going to, spread your magic. And everybody must read this book. I can't wait to read it.
And it's funny too. Like there are funny, like that was probably the most like, oh, but it's
a beautiful story. But where do you find the time? I mean, I have a dog and a husband, and this whole COVID thing, I have all the chapters outlined. It's like, I'm like, I can't even find 4 minutes to do my Slay the Muffin Top, the Lucy Chapman videos on YouTube.
I wrote it between 3 and 5 in the morning on my phone.
How are you, like this?
Yeah, like this on my phone. When I couldn't sleep, that's when I wrote it. And then I put it together. Yep, that's what happened. And I emailed it to myself.
You emailed me. I sent you an email at 3:00 in the morning, and all of a sudden I see 3:37. You responded, and I was like, "Oh, okay." But you're perky and you're cogent sentences, and I'm stumbling. I'm like,
Now that's my creative time, because you know what? Because everybody leaves me the hell alone. Then it's quiet. Right. I got 2 kids, a cat, and 2 gerbils. There's no way that I could just be sitting up here. And listen, I could not do any of this without my husband. And I have to give the Aussie credit, because he really, like, the man.
He's a tall drink of water.
He is. He's a hottie too.
Beyond.
And he supports me, and we support each other, and we know that we're a team. I mean, I don't know if you remember when we met, but he and I met, and like our second date basically never ended.
Yeah.
And then we got married. Well, we got married twice. The first time was in Nicaragua, and apparently it wasn't legal. So we had to do it again in California. And we got pregnant the day after our first wedding, and I found out the day after our second wedding 3 weeks later. So we had our first wedding anniversary, which was, we got married a year the day of our first date. At our first wedding anniversary, we had a 3-month-old.
Amazing. I remember it was really, really, really quick. And it was, your first or second date, but he's like the Marlboro Australian version of the Marlboro Man. I mean, he's so tall, and he's got that, that curly mane of his, and he rides motorcycles, and
I know,
got that accent. And the fact, I mean, you two are, 2 peas in a pod. It works.
But we couldn't look more opposite. That's the funny thing. I'm like a chubby brown Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City, and he's like, motorcycle Steve. Like, it's crazy.
He's like Mick Dundee. He's crocodile. He's crocodile Dundee for serious, for sure. Absolutely. And my husband, we're a great team. I mean,
you guys are awesome together.
We look alike. We're the same height. It's I take that back. He is taller than me. But it's great to be with somebody and actually have somebody that has your back, particularly nowadays.
Yeah.
You'd need
that was another thing. I happened to catch, and I'm referencing Dave Chapelle a lot, but I happened to catch him on the Joe Rogan show
podcast.
And the podcast. And he was talking about how, like, times like this, like quarantine, makes you really like reflect on your choices, right? Yeah. Like your choice to either be with someone or be alone, or like your choice for like what you have in your home and where you live. Like you have to truly be okay with your choices right now.
You have to be. And also, I feel like this is a psychic, spiritual, universal reset. And I really hope that the people will the takeaway from this time is having to be kinder, being kinder to yourself, choosing happiness over depression. Don't let the fact that we are we're stuck in the quarantine. And also, I do feel like it's, the people, the science deniers, and then the people that wear masks, and the people that feel like it's their right not to. And
it really constitutes like where your beliefs lie, and, how much you really are digging into the science of things, and the concern of who legitimately has our interests at heart, who is trying to monopolize or work on an agenda. And so I think, this is where the critical thinking has to come into play.
Yeah, you have to be able to collate all of the information and make a decision. Now, somebody who got COVID, I don't know if you knew this.
I did.
My husband and I are 1,000% compliant. Like I have been in like just an obsessive germaphobe since I started doing stand-up. Like even if I couldn't even smell the microphones. I've been doing stand-up for over 25 years and I still remember like the smell of a microphone after following some scuzzy guy. But flying, I wipe everything down. And when people found out that we got COVID, they were like, you got COVID? And it is a motherfucker. That's all I can say. My husband had a fever for 10 days. Thank God I didn't have it. But when all of a sudden your sense of taste and smell goes, and you feel like you're breathing through gauze, and when you see all the healthcare workers and they're in tears and they're wearing this, it breaks my heart that people think, well, people die from the flu. I'm like, yeah, but you don't see refrigerator trucks with bodies because the funeral homes can't accommodate. I don't mean to get, but having gone through it.
No, listen, this is real life, right?
Yeah.
And we got to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's, and I think part of why there's such a discrepancy about how people feel about us, because some people do think it's just a cold,
right?
And there are people who've gotten it and been like, no. That doesn't mean that it's not serious just because it doesn't affect you dramatically.
Right.
I had a cousin die,
right.
Who got it, and yes, he was in the bracket of people who were really susceptible, but he still isn't here anymore, and it's a life on that. Maybe if the person who'd been in his car had been cognizant or known better, like they wouldn't have spread the germs somehow. You know what I mean? Like there's just so many factors, and there are a lot of what ifs.
A lot of what ifs, but listen, I'm on the Upper East Side and there's all these hospitals and there's a lot of, doctors that live in this building, and, I'm chit-chatting with everybody. And he said, you have no idea, watching a person with COVID, a young person, an old person, a senior, gasping for breath because this disease is choking the shit out of you. And then people having to die alone. I mean, it's brutal. Anyway, let's end on a good note.
Yes.
Okay.
Fabulous.
Karith, tell everybody the title of your book and where they can follow you.
You Can Be Perfect or You Can Be Happy. And if people actually wanted an autographed copy, they just have to message me, which they can do. Karith.com, Karith is my website. Karith@karith.com is my email. I'm on social media at Karith Foster. And the book is also available on Amazon, either on Kindle or hard copy. So.
And it's, 4.5 stars out of 5. So kudos to you, girlfriend.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
No, really great reviews from people. And I've been taking it as a speaking program to corporations. Same with the university programming. And, my goal, honestly, is just to leave the world a better place than I came into it, and to do it with humor and laughter and love.
Cheers to that. That was incredibly eloquent, and I concur 100%. Karith, I love you. Thank you so much for spending an hour with me. I feel like this is part 1 and part 2, but it's been great catching up with you.
I love you too. Thank you.